Hello, Keith.
Hello, Rick. How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy.
Hey,
How are you?
Hey, by the way, your middle initial is S, right?
It's L.
L. What does L stand for?
L stands for S. No, that's wrong. It's actually Lewis.
No one I thought it was S.
Well, you had a good intuition. Good intuition about that. That's right.
It starts. Is it Lewis?
It's Lewis. Yeah, L-O-U, not L-E-W.
Okay, great.
Oh, yes.
Were you named after someone in particular?
The two kings of France.
Oh, really?
No, shit.
You don't know?
No, I have no idea. No, I think it's some relatives. One was a felon, one was an alcoholic. I'm sure that
Something
covered
like
our
that.
family pretty.
Nice. Are you curious what my middle initial is?
I think it is another K.
No, it's not. It's W. It's William after my grandfather.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Keith William.
Keith William.
That's an elegant name.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate it.
KW.
KW, baby.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, neat.
So today's show is going to be life and relationships are your spiritual practice.
Oh, man. I feel like we ought to get a minister here. Take my place. I'm probably the wrong dude on this one.
No, you're always the right guy
Oh,
for this.
jeez. Okay, so let's start with what relationships mean. I mean, I think some people think of relationships as being only those things that are positive, because if you have a bad relationship with a person, it's not a relationship. It's
Right.
really kind of a circumstance you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think the relationship is almost indifferent whether it's good or bad.
Wow, what a concept.
Yes.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yes, it's neither good nor bad. It's just an opportunity for you to have a spiritual practice.
Oh, I see. So that phenomena is what you react to. That's whether it's good or bad. It'll be instructive in some way for you.
Absolutely. I used to think that that relationships, the purpose that they served was to make me happy. That was the ego's thinking. Like, you're here to make me happy, whether it was my parents give me what I want, provide security and shelter, and of course any desire that my heart may have, you're supposed to provide it. That entitlement.
Yep.
If it was in a relationship, you're here to make me happy. It's your job. Man, what a heavy load to lay on somebody, that you're responsible for my happiness. And if it was friendships, I need you to have my back no matter what. You can never ever let me down. And if it was an owner of a company or a manager that I worked under, I thought it was their responsibility to make sure that that they made me feel valued and validated by the work that I do, and to teach me and train me in a way to where I reach my goals. Like, I just put all this weight on relationships. So that's how I first started off. And then as I started to work on myself, I had another thinking, but it was still attached to ego. And that thinking was, okay, there's some positive, good relationships that I can learn from and model that behavior. And then there are the bad relationships, so these people are teaching me how not to show up, how not to act. But in the latter case especially, what I'm doing is judging. And judging is not a trait that I want to take on.
So you get a bit of a spiritual hit, a reinforcement of your own spiritual elevation when you stop judging, when you realize that you're
Absolutely.
judging. So that's why that kind of bad relationship is training for you.
Absolutely. Bad, yeah, and the good relationships are great too, because they inspire me, but the bad ones or the ones that don't feel that I would that are not my preference. Mm-hmm. They're still just as valuable, because they give me the opportunity to practice acceptance, mm-hmm. to practice unconditional love, mm-hmm. to practice being loving kindness no matter how people show up or what they do, patience, acceptance. Like, it gives me all of that,
Those are great.
with it. So both relationships are, they're beneficial. Both relationships are important to my growth.
Okay, when we're talking about spirituality, how is that different, let's say, than psychological or emotional stability? When you're using the term spirituality, what are you getting at? What is it that we're supposed to take from that?
Well, for me, when I think about emotional experience, I think more about whether it makes me happy or it makes me sad. Am I, joyful or am I angry and mad? I think it's one of those two. But when I think about spiritual, I think about clearing space so that peace is what you see, kindness is what you see, and that it is not at the effect of a situation or life or what someone else does. Mm-hmm. It's just true in the stage right there. So when I think about spirituality, I think about it just is. When I think about emotional, anything associated with emotion, that is a reaction to something or someone. I mean, does that make sense?
It does. It does. I can see how you believe that, and I am with you on that. I would skew it just a little bit.
Okay.
I would turn the kaleidoscope just a hair and maybe try this. To me, spirituality has an aspect to it that's ethereal, that's kind of mysterious. There's a mysterious aspect to spirituality, something that you can't quite define, put your finger on, that may be counterintuitive, but still is worthwhile to pursue. And the ultimate value of spirituality, in my view, is it provides us with a sense of certainty in a world of uncertainty. So that certainty in the face of uncertainty comes from what you were describing, this sense of inner peace, this calmness, and I would also add an interdependence with others, a connection with others, a connection with nature, or a connection with something that's larger than yourself, even if it's just nothing more than a connection with the universal principles of gravity or cause and effect, or however you want to define whatever God is for you. But I think that spirituality has that combination of mystery, interdependence with other people, a feeling of something greater than yourself, and also something that helps you deal with the uncertainty that life brings.
Oh, I completely agree. So yeah, I think the way that you kind of dialed it to the right a bit, I'm right there with you. I'm aligned right there with you.
And I think the point of it is not to say that there's any particular brand or flavor of it that is absolute, and I think that's probably controversial enough. I'm trying to be as generous as I can, in including every kind of spiritual practice that there could be within that category. But I also think that there has to be some personal investment where your practice has a repetition to it and a sense of becoming more connected with other people. So that the end result of the spirituality is not rejection of others, it's embracing
Absolutely.
and including others.
Right. Absolutely. For the longest time, I grew up thinking that for me to have a certain kind of peace or to obtain it, it would mean I need to go to yoga every day.
Yeah.
Or I need to do a meditation every single day for hours, and sitting meditations, or the people that are the most spiritual who really get it are monks, or they're super involved into their church or whatever their religion might be. I thought that was a ticket, and I grew up in church, my whole life as a kid, all the way up through, the time I left for the military. I was in church my whole life, and I thought that was it. And at least for me, what I've learned is, and I had to guard myself against judging people that, oh my God, this guy's in church all the time, carrying on like this, or whatever, like that's not spiritual. I had to give all of that up and stop judging. We're human beings, man. We are going to be led astray by the ego left and right, all the time. And I certainly have been. If you listen to any of our podcasts before this one, you hear me come clean about a lot of the things that I did that were not aligned that were not consistent with me being my best. But what I wanted was, at least for me, what I learned was it was not about taking a yoga class or going to this church or being involved with this. It was more about, am I living that way of being every single minute of every day? Which would mean being perfect, and I'm certainly not perfect, but it's with that kind of intention, it's with that kind of mindset to live in that way, and life gives me an opportunity to continue to try to, it gives me plenty of opportunities to practice it. And so my practice goes beyond an hour yoga class or being around people that happen to be really spiritual that I look up to, like you, it's when I'm around someone who is who may not see women or minorities as equal. It's being around people that are on one side of politics and the other side. It's around people that aren't particularly kind all the time. It's when life doesn't show up the way that I would prefer it to be. In those moments, when those things happen, am I peaceful? Am I being loving and kind? Can I practice gratitude? That's what I mean that's what I mean when I say life and relationships are the spiritual practice, because they're on 24/7 every single day. Anybody can be peaceful when life is lined up right, and anybody can be peaceful when the person next to you is gracious and kind 100% of the time, when that person isn't like that.
That's right. Adversity is the test of whether your spiritual practice is working.
Exactly. And I offer that relationships offer the biggest test.
Yeah, that in the evening news.
Right. Exactly.
Which we don't watch, by the way.
No, we don't. So have you found that relationships have been great spiritual teachers for you?
Oh, sure. For the same reason, as I said, I think adversity is the real test of whether you're walking the talk. And I believe that almost all religions have in common the concept that we're not alone, that we're connected to each other at least. And some religions go beyond that and say that there's something past connection with others, including nature or a God or something of that sort. But I do believe connection is at the heart of it. And along with that are two other very important concepts for me. The connection means interdependence, which requires compassion and kindness above all.
Absolutely.
I think if you just boiled it down to one word, the notion that kindness is salvation, the kindness equals salvation, I think would be accurate if you boiled it down to that phrase, using those two words. Kindness equals salvation. There's a misconception that if you're kind, that you're allowing other people to ruin you or run over you or hurt your family or take advantage of you. I think you can stand up for yourself and be an honorable, moral person, and a very good lawyer, fighting for what you believe in, and still be kind, and still have compassion, even for your enemy. And I also believe that those people who are the most successful are able to convince other people, because of their kindness and compassion, that is an appropriate way to walk through life.
I completely agree. Growing up, my stepfather, who I've mentioned before, he was challenged with alcoholism, and so I grew up in a household where there was a lot of physical and verbal abuse. And for the longest time, I wanted to be the exact opposite of him. So that was where my ego was in play, and the lesson that he was going to teach me was what not to do. And as I started to really work on myself, work on being loving and kind, no matter how people of life showed up, he represented a spiritual teacher for me that gave me an opportunity to practice loving unconditionally.
Wow. What a challenge for you too.
Yeah.
What a challenge.
And accepting him for who he is, and at the same time acknowledging him for being very kind, and at a time when my mom really needed a rock to lean on. He provided that.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't last long,
Mm-hmm.
but the time that she needed, he provided cover for her.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to acknowledge that, as opposed to only seeing the things that were undesirable during my childhood that I attributed to him, was really part of that spiritual growth, and he provided that to me. So I'm super grateful. Like, he taught me how to be grateful for it all.
That spirituality, that kind of spirituality, I think is really, really important, because it allows you to open your own heart to everyone else. Once you have that down, when you're able to do that with somebody that was so close but also so devastating to you, and I'm sure treated you poorly when he was drunk, and maybe your family and your mom as well, but to be able to turn that around because of your ability to grow from that relationship is very profound, and it says a lot about who you are.
Well, thank you. You said something else that, I want to kind of tie, along with what I'm saying about my stepfather. And what that is that by me accepting him for who he is and learning those valuable lessons of unconditional love that he taught me, or provided the opportunity for me to learn, it didn't make me a pushover.
Yeah, there you go.
Because while I was looking at him as representing something else as opposed to a benevolent spiritual teacher, instead of looking at him that way, what I was doing was casting him as an enemy, which the ego loves to do. And I've been suffering for decades, you know, and I was taking that into all my relationships and interactions with the world from the time that I created him as a monster in my mind all the way to the time that I gave it up. But once I gave it up and just had nothing but unconditional love for him, acceptance and gratitude, I got peace.
Yeah.
I got peace, you know. So I think by me allowing him to be my spiritual teacher, he created an opening for that to flow through.
Boy, beautifully said.
And it was a clearing. So
Beautifully said.
kindness is always way to go. And you know, I'm a big believer that there are no such things as pushovers. And I took in, by that clearing being there, that opening, I was able to take intelligent action. In this case, intelligent action was letting it go.
Yeah, letting it go is always wise for hurt. I mean, what's the point? It takes more energy to reserve the hurt, and it's contrary to all the rules of the universe, the primary one of which is love, to continue to hurt or want to hurt other people.
Right.
Even though you've been hurt. I mean, your best way is, for your own peace of mind, is to recognize it, try to remedy whatever the solution is. If there's an apology to be made, make it. If you've been wronged, give that person love, walk away, and not have anything more to do with it.
Yeah, you know, another one of my spiritual teachers in terms of relationships have been, you know, someone I've dated, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's been another big one for me. And what made them important is I always thought I was a person who wasn't jealous or insecure. But whenever I felt like my ego felt like I wasn't getting the attention that I deserved, that I was being disrespected, this other side of me would come out. The little Keith would come out, and I would try to either by passive aggressive behavior or through logic try to get them to do what I wanted them to do, or try to make them treat me the way I want to be treated, or love me the way I want to be loved. And all of that was through coercion and control. But as you know, I was fearful. I mean, I didn't have the language, or my ego wouldn't let me use the language to say, I'm scared right now, that I don't feel secure in this relationship and those things. You know, that was, but the conscious self, you know, my true self, it always feels secure. And what that
It has nothing to do with anybody else.
It's nothing to do with anybody else. And what those relationships taught me was that I was attached. And that I was making this person responsible for me feeling secure, for me feeling loved and lovable, and for me feeling that they're responsible for my happiness. And once I gave that heavy weight up, that they're responsible for all of that, I just got, again, peace. And I was able to love them unconditionally. And if it was a relationship that wasn't right for me, then I can let it go with no attachment and still be completely loving toward them.
Sure, I think that's right. That's a wonderful lesson and a great example. The idea that we have compassion is not weak. I think that strengthens you, that gives you an inner power that a lot of other people don't have. One of the things that really helped me quite a bit, I was very judgmental as a young lawyer and as a young man, but one of the things that I tried to work out of, and I still work on it, is the idea that there are so many people that you think are a problem for you are working through things so difficult and so debilitating, you have no idea how much they're suffering. And if you start with the idea that we're all in the same boat, and to some degree, whether you're Steven Spielberg and a billionaire, or whether you're somebody homeless that's sleeping in the Greyhound bus terminal, we all share the commonality of suffering. I mean, that's part of what life involves, being hungry, being in love and not having the love returned, not having any money, having a disease, whatever it might be. We all suffer. And so once I realized that if you are all in the same boat together, it has to be a sense of compassion for others and for yourself.
Yeah, yourself. That spiritual relationship with yourself is super important.
And once you have that, I think, inside, and you truly believe it, you can let a lot of these things that are troubling go. And the spiritual payoff for that is you feel like there is some certainty at least you're certain that you are interconnected with other people and you're going through something that's no different than anyone else. And it's something that you probably can't control except through a mindfulness practice, which we could talk about another time. But I think that's really an important realization. It's something to monitor.
Absolutely. I think the mindfulness practice is where your spiritual teacher becomes the things that you do with yourself, your relationship with yourself, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And other people provide
It's a mirror.
Yeah, other people.
mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Other people are the mirror for what's really going on within you.
Yeah.
And so other people, and life are really your spiritual practice. And that was really important to me to get that. I mean, like, oh my God, I don't just have to wait until I go see a counselor, a life coach, or a therapist, or this one friend who is like really centered before I can really like, hey, give me the tools to work on patience for this hour. Let me practice, serving other people by going to volunteer, a couple times a month. No, be of service every single day. You open doors for people, be kind to people, have conversations, be connected, practice novelty, notice something different about their glasses, or something else that connects you to them. Like every single day, life and people provide you with an opportunity to go through your spiritual practice. Yeah, that gets me excited about every single day. Like every single day, I get stronger in my practice. Like how cool is that?
It's really great.
It's
You
really
gotta
cool.
bottle that. I wish you could bottle that. So
Thank you. We're doing it, baby. We're doing it.
Spirituality.
We're doing it. So is there anything else you want to close with, Rick?
I just want to say one other thing, and that I think is probably redundant because we're more or less have covered it. To go into your heart and to realize that there is pain there does not mean that you have to stop or that there's something wrong with you. You have to stop living a certain way or that there's something wrong with you. It's not that. It's that we're all in some way going through things that we don't like. It's the idea that you can still have a happy life and still be of service to others and still be loving and kind regardless of what you're receiving back. And once you detach from the need to have that reinforcement and to be totally within yourself in that area and loving to other people, once you get to that point, I think your suffering is ameliorated. It's lessened by a good deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll just add that, that coworker who's difficult to be around, who's challenging, the spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, or former relationship that you still have some kind of connection to, is challenging at times. Whatever the case may be, once you start to look at them, it's like, okay, you know what? I can smile about this because this person's my teacher right now. And this is an opportunity for me to just practice acceptance, and to practice not being defensive, which is what the ego loves to do. It loves to get in there and spar around and tussle in the mud. And you just give all of that up and just and then you sit back and you start to just watch the show and just hold space of loving kindness for whatever's playing out in front of you, and you detach from it. And detachment is a key, and then you can just really take in the lesson as if you're watching somebody give a tutorial. You just sit there like, oh, okay, cool. This is where, right here is where I do my patience. I got it. Okay. Yeah. Right now they give me an opportunity to practice acceptance.
Yeah, there you go.
And you just start to get really, really good at it, and things start to come to you in slow motion. And on the other side of that, it's just a ton of peace.
Yeah,
a ton of peace.
A lack of suffering, for sure.
Yeah, lack of suffering, for sure.
That's really, when Keith was talking earlier about the clearing, that's the empowerment of spirituality. It clears out a lot of wasted energy that you're spending on trying to argue or trying to put the other person down or in their place or, stick up for yourself or whatever those artificial things are that make you angry and all of those useless emotions that get you nowhere. Inner peace is tough to find, but it is there, and there's a way to it. And it's not fanciful, but it has nothing to do with trying to be something other than you're not. You don't have to put on any airs. You don't have to act any certain way. One little thing, before we finish, one little thing that really is troubling for me is that you find people who claim to be spiritual, and they talk in this weird way. And then there's like super calm and like they're super enlightened. That's all nonsense. That's as bad as somebody who's going, hey, what are you talking about? I mean, it's just you're at the same low level.
Right.
You're not really anywhere. I mean, you don't have to do any of that. You can do it all inside without showing any externals. It's all about you inside.
Yeah.
Inside.
It's so nice to be there, right?
Well, I'm working on it.
We both are.
I love you,
man. Thank you.
I
Thanks,
do.
Rick.